welcome to another episode of Beautiful Subconscious. I am your host, Shell Marie. Today, we have a very special guest. Her name is Majella from That Grieving Girl. And we would love to share her story for the women of this podcast, for the parents of this podcast that are looking for support through a, difficult time of their lives. So it's with my pleasure to introduce to you Majella, That Grieving Girl. So That Grieving Girl is a compassionate support platform founded by Majella, a mother who has turned her own profound grief into a mission to help others. After losing her daughter, Majella dedicated herself to create a safe space where grieving mothers can find community, healing, and empowerment. It's through her lived experience and holistic practices she offers guidance and support to help mothers navigate their grief and reclaim their lives. Welcome, Majella. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on, Shell.
Oh, no, this is great. I'm so excited. I'm so grateful that we had connected on beautiful Insta and a mutual friend. And I think your journey and your story is just the most moving and touching and inspiring mission. And I can't wait to delve more into that. But before we do, it's a little bit of a ritual for our episodes where we pull an intention card. And so I'm just going to shuffle some around and I'm going to get you to say stop whenever you feel ready.
Hold on. Stop.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Oh, all right. So for this week's episode, our intention is I am completely fulfilled when I'm being my authentic self. I love that. Okay.
Love that.
Yeah, we'll see how that kind of ties in. I mean, you know what? I can see already how that would tie into the topics that we're going to be talking about today, because sometimes our authentic selves isn't the most easiest to make peace with, but it is understandably the most empowering when we include every part of our journey to, just be and to be completely fulfilled by. So I would love, if you wouldn't mind, if you could please share your journey and how you became that grieving girl.
Yeah, well, I'd love to. And it's actually really funny because that authenticity card really kind of will tie into what I'm about to explain and how I got here.
I love that.
So 4 years ago, we lost our daughter. She was born at 32 weeks with a disease called hydrops, which was a byproduct of something else that she'd had from 12 weeks. So we'd gone through 3.5 weeks in hospital with her. And then what had happened then was she was no longer kind of viable for life. The doctors had told us that it wasn't in our best interest or her best interest to keep her going. So we made the decision to let her pass peacefully. And when we did that, it was the most excruciating, shocking pain anyone can ever go through. And so we'd left the hospital and we had to kind of navigate this new life that we were left with. We had a daughter who was 3 at the time. So it was also about navigating, one, how to show up for her, how to show up for ourselves, how to show up in our relationships, how to show up to everyone in life. Yeah. So for me, I think what happened after that was I went into this massive shock. And I did this thing where I actually suppressed all of the pain. I suppressed the experience. A really big thing that I did back then was I told myself that I was really at peace with it. I was really at peace with the situation. I was all good. And probably about 6 months later, my mum fell really ill to depression. She's had it our whole life, so she fell really ill to depression. And so she was in and out of psych wards for about 6 months. So I basically became her full-time carer within that situation. So I had distracted from all my pain of my child loss and spent my whole time looking after my mum. So that kind of really took me out of that, I guess, that shock of losing my daughter, because I was using something else to distract myself from the pain.
Sure.
And at that time, I kind of hadn't really realized what was going on for me. It was kind of, I was in fight or flight mode. I was like, keep going, keep going. you've got so much other stuff to deal with. And now, losing your child has been probably the last thing you've got to deal with at the moment. So come probably about a year and a half later, me and my partner had separated, which is my daughter's father.
Mhm.
And that was basically like the Mack truck that kind of really hit me. In a sense, I look back at it now and I think losing my daughter was the Mack truck, but I wasn't able to see it at that time. And so when I separated from my partner, that was kind of the Mack truck that brought everything up for me. I was so sad, depressed, whatever you want to call it. I was, drinking, using substances just to be able to parent my daughter and to be able to cope with life. And that's when I kind of realized, I'm like, hey, something's really not right here. I'm not doing well at all. And I think breaking up with my partner at the time had brought everything to the surface for me to go, okay, where do I go to from here? And
Mm.
so I started working with a really good friend of mine who's a holistic psychologist. And what she kind of did for me and everything she taught me kind of put a whole 360 on my life. And I started really trying to heal. She said to me one day, she goes, do you actually realize that you've never really dealt with your emotions after losing Indy? Like the way you speak about it is as if it's just something that kind of happened in your life and, oh, it's sad, but oh, well. And it really, really was. So I think once I came to realize that I needed to actually deal with that grief because it was coming out in physical symptoms. Like I think I had headaches for a year. I had gut issues, severe memory loss, couldn't deal
Mm.
with decisions or anything like that. And so it wasn't until I actually started going, I'm actually going to deal with my child loss grief now,
Mm.
that it all started to kind of come up and it all started to really, it just seemed clear for me that what I had done was suppressed all of my emotions, that was that pain, suppressed it all. And it was coming out in every other aspect of my life. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until I went on my healing journey did I actually notice that a lot of it was based from that child loss trauma. And I started to realize that not once had I ever heard anything about any of this when I left the hospital. No one had talked to me about it. I went through years and years and years going through all of this pain and, all of these physical symptoms and I'd never even heard of any of this type of work to be
Yeah.
that, this is the whole thing that got me through it was doing this work and actually dealing with it. And so that is why I built that grieving girl, because I was like, how do people not know about this type of work when dealing with child loss grief? Because I think mothers going through it get so lost in the crowd. I really, really do.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's so sad the amount of people that reach out to me going, I'm not dealing with it. It's 3 years. I'm not coping with it. I've lost control of my life. My inner dialect is just insane. They tell me about symptoms they have. I'm like, this is all a part of child loss grief and the trauma caused by the coping mechanisms and the strategies and the trauma of that day. This is what it brings up for us, but there's just nothing out there.
Yeah. Wow. Wow, that's huge. Thank you for sharing all of that. Like it just, you can, in that time, I can, gosh, I can't even fathom being a parent myself of what that experience would have been like for you at that time. And then, it, in retrospect, you can understand also how that immensity of that trauma and that loss and that grief, the nervous system and your soul, all of that would have just been in such overwhelm and maxed out and shocked to be able to know the capacity or to know how to handle that capacity. So suppressing and then just trying to push it aside and keep yourself, busy with taking care of other people other than taking care of yourself, because it just seems like the more easier option at that time until you have no other options but to deal, or it's that one thing that pushes you over the edge. And it's like you
Yeah.
mentioned, that separation.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
And
huge.
it's crazy because I think your nervous system has such a big role to play in it.
Mm.
And I see so many women say that they can't actually navigate their grief. They can't learn to emotionally process it because it overwhelms them, because their body is not regulated enough to be able to handle that healthy grief style. And their
Mm.
body is not healthy enough and their nervous system's not healthy enough because they've been through a huge trauma and they aren't aware of the effects that it has on us to go through something so big. It's not just emotional pain and mental pain, it's physical. Like there is physical changes that happen in your body when you lose a child. And these are all
Yeah.
things I kind of wish that I was aware of when I was going through it. I really
Yeah.
wasn't later on. And I was like, the light bulbs started switching on left, right, and center. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is child loss trauma. This is child loss trauma. And then once I became aware of it, I was like, okay, now I can start working through it rather
Mm.
than just thinking they're all normal symptoms that I have in everyday life.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. That's that's huge. And so you've taken that time of your life and every symptom and condition that you experienced and created, this mission of yours. And, at that time, like, did you even know that, I guess, this would be a direction that you would take this? Like, what did you need at that time that just wasn't available for you?
Yeah, well, to be honest, once I lost my daughter, I actually said, and I said, I want this to be my purpose. Like, I really, really believed that I was given Indy, that's her name. I was given Indy for a purpose, or she was going to be the purpose moving forward. But because I was going through such a tumultuous time, there's no way I could make this all happen, if that made sense. So, even back then, there wasn't much support for grieving mothers. I'd found nothing. I went to see therapists, saw psychologists, but obviously without the lived experience, I didn't resonate with their
Sure.
care at all.
Sure.
And so yeah, they just there was nothing else out there. I did work for a charity called the Ladybird Care Foundation, which they're a beautiful charity that helps connect other bereaved parents, which for me was amazing, because if you can connect to another parent that's gone through the same situation, that is so much more help than, to be honest, working with a psychologist was for me personally,
Yeah, I
because there
understand
was
that.
that understanding.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think, yeah, it wasn't until probably in the last 6 months to a year that I was like, I am going to turn my pain into my power, because I believe it's just something that grieving mothers really need and it's not out there.
Yeah, right. And you can completely understand that, where there is just something that really connects and resonates with someone that has experienced, that mutual lived, trauma or
Yeah.
experience, or a similarity with that. And to have that community of like, I really see you and I understand what you've gone through it because I've lived it myself. There is just something that you can understand would make you feel like, thank God I'm not the only one right now. And we can help
Yeah.
each other through this. There's so many more women and parents like us out there that we can band together and really, help each other through the most difficult, horrendous experience one could ever imagine.
Yeah. And I think even, a lot of the way, and this was massive for me, but a lot of the coping mechanisms that we use to survive probably weren't healthy. So when you have another mother going, that's how, I did that. I did the same thing that you did. And although it may not have been a healthy coping mechanism, it's what we did to survive in the moment, but you're here now shifting it.
Yeah.
And I think that was the biggest thing for me, was I had to take away the shame
Mm.
for what I did in order to survive. And I've actually got to a place now where I want other mothers to feel that as well, because so
Yes.
many people are talking about, drinking abuse, they binge watch, they do all of these things as a way to survive. And then they feel massive shame around it, because
Yeah.
unless you're kind of in the situation, do you really understand that that's survival in that moment?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad that that's, like absolutely one of your driving forces, because on top of everything else, the last thing anyone deserves is to have the shame slammed upon that of like, "Oh, I should know better. Like I'm not, and then that compounds on top of something that is
Yeah.
already so incredibly debilitating, I'd imagine. So, to alleviate that shame and just honoring that, like, this is what the tools that you had available at the time, or as far as you could go. And that's okay.
Yeah.
It is more than okay. You've got to do what you can do just to get through. So yeah, commend you for that. And so I guess in terms of that community and the program that you're putting together, what is the main sort of support you want to give to the mothers and the parents that are going through a grief of losing a child?
Yes, I mean, I built it where there's a few aspects to the support that'll be given. So one of the biggest parts about it was I want to teach them everything that I had learned in the fact of the grief is always going to be there,
Mm-hmm.
but you have the ability to become empowered by it and to learn how to integrate it into your life and basically let it come into your life and still be there, but be able to handle it
Mm.
and to learn how to integrate it without it dominating you, and helping these women find their identity. I think your identity is so tragically lost when you lose a child. So it's about bringing who she is again, not before child loss, not after child loss, but well, yes, after child loss, but aside from all of that, how does all of that form in together to be one?
Yes.
Which I think is so important for mothers because you really do,
Yeah.
you just don't even know who you are anymore.
Oh
And
gosh. Yeah.
then the other aspect is that community. Like I want these group of women to build this unshakable bond, to support each other, to go through the healing journey together, which a lot of mothers are on it. They're on the path alone, and the way I
Mm-hmm.
built it is a full group container where they all do it together and they do it side by side and kind of keep each other moving on, which I think, yeah, it's quite isolating in child loss grief,
Oh
especially for the
yeah.
mother.
I can imagine. There was a lot of things that you mentioned in terms of, being somewhat neutral on the grief that will always be there. And I think getting to that place of understanding that that grief will be there would have taken a lot of inner work and a lot of inner healing for you to get to that awareness that grief is not something that we can, cut out and delete out of our lives. It's going to be there. It's just working in with it and giving it its own space that's valid too. So I'm intrigued just to hear what you did for like in terms of your inner work. And I know that you had touched on, outside of us talking now, that there were some subconscious practices that were introduced to and partook in. So I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, so I mean, it took me quite a few years to get to a space where I could allow the grief to be without, with fully understanding that it was always going to be there. I think I searched for years to try and get rid of it. And once I understood it was always going to be there, but the aftermath of what had happened didn't have to be there. The physical ailments that I, had didn't have to be there. And so once I started my healing journey, and probably where I got me to here was quite a lot of subconscious work, which was working through a lot of the limiting beliefs that I'd really formed after my child loss,
Would
and
you
it's
mind sharing some of those limiting beliefs? What would you
yeah. So
say?
I know a huge one for me, and I know this is for a lot of mothers, is that doom thought, that as if you are going around the corner and there is always something waiting for you that's going to happen, or that there is everything's going to end. Everything's going to turn out really bad. It's because our brain, the way it works, once we've lost our child and we've lost all control of keeping the one thing that we want, we've lost all that control. So it's almost like we've lost control of making any situation be within our power. And so for me, that was a huge one, was rewiring that negative belief that I had around
Yeah, wow.
everything, that everyone was either going to leave or pass away or something bad was going to happen. So I would keep this massive safeguard up and
Yeah,
I would keep
wow.
everyone out to be able to, safeguard
Persevere.
myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, to persevere. And so I did a lot of subconscious work. I did a lot of trauma release work to actually move that energy out of my body to be able to clear space for me to hold some, some really nice, joyful moments that I wasn't able to.
Mm.
Another one that I really found prominent was that I wasn't able to feel the joy in life. I had all of these really beautiful things around me, and I lived a really beautiful life, but I didn't feel any joy. It was almost like I was just so numb. And
Mm.
so for me, that was a lot about releasing that trauma that had come from losing my child, because it was like my body was just so overworked. There was so much going on internally. I wasn't able to process anything nice. I wasn't able to see how beautiful my life was because, yeah, there was so much going on. So that was probably a huge one
Yeah,
for me.
yeah. Gosh, you could understand that too, because as much as in that state, you can imagine that your body is just trying to get through and manage the trauma and slowly process it in the capacity it has available at that time. And that capacity would, I'd imagine, be so at its maximum that just anything good or bad, but anything good
Yeah.
just has no space to land. It's just like, I'm just getting through. I'm just getting through. I can see you, but I can't connect with you because I'm just trying to survive.
Yeah. And, for a really, really long time, I used drinking as a way to feel that happiness. That's the extremities of what it got to.
Mm,
Because for me, it was the only way to feel that kind of bubbly, happy feeling.
mhm.
And, that's when I realized, I'm like, God, this really is not what I'm supposed to be doing. This is not the purpose of life, is to only feel happy when you drink alcohol. So it really took a lot of work to be able to work through a lot of that stuff to get me to that place where now I thoroughly enjoy my life. I see those glimmers. I'm grateful. I see it every single day with still holding that grief.
Yeah, yeah, right. There's like, and you said it so beautifully earlier as well, just having that space of who you were, not only just who you were before the loss, during the loss, after the loss, the meaning of the, what meaning you're wanting to choose to make this all be part of the whole of who you are. And that part of who you are, there's always going to be that space of grief, but then alongside that grief there is space for joy as well. Like the two can coexist next to each
Yeah.
other, quite nicely and balanced. And I think that's just such a incredible, inspiring space that you've managed to navigate yourself to then now be able to lead women to achieve that within themselves at that time. So that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so important for women to be able to understand they can have that. And it is
Mm,
possible, because at the end of the day, grief, you just can't run from it. It's
yeah.
like forever there. So you've got to learn how to coexist with it. And it doesn't have to be this really ugly, really heavy thing. Of course, it is to a degree, but I think sometimes we get so caught up and that's all it is.
Yeah,
So then we don't want to even have it in our life at all. And then we
that's
push
right.
it to the side, and it's like they can actually coexist really beautifully.
Yeah. I think, just through the line of work that I'm in and what we've learned to be true is that it's the simple accepting of any emotion, but grief and sometimes those more thicker emotions, those ones that we don't necessarily want, like sadness for me, I used to reject all the time. I'm like, I don't have time to be sad. Like that was always a reoccurring expression that I used to have. But I think the acceptance of the emotion will change the quality of it, so that that real explosive or horrendous grief that we can often identify grief to only be. Yes, there is still that to be true in some circumstances, and maybe that'll show up every once in a while in that expression. But grief can also be like a more neutral and more duller tone of that, where it's there and you can have these moments of feeling just a little lower in energy and a little lower in vibration, but it's not from that description of what we expect grief to always be like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. It actually, I had a bit of a download when you were saying that. But last year, for the day that Indy passed away, which was her anniversary day, I spent the whole day on a rock down the Gold Coast, and I spent the whole day crying. It was like, some would say, the saddest day. If you saw me on this rock, you would feel so sorry for this woman. Like, I was weeping all day. And I actually left, I left that rock. I was there all day and I left it and I go, that was one of the most beautiful days I'd ever had. And it really was made apparent to me that just because I have these really sad emotions, or, I felt pain. I was definitely feeling the pain that day, but I didn't see it as how I used to years ago and how people would probably view it looking on the outside. For me, it was like I didn't want to leave the rock. I wanted to keep crying because it felt nice. It felt beautiful. And I think that's where for years I avoided that because I didn't see it that way and I couldn't handle it in that way. And I
Sure.
think that's what grief is understanding that you can cry and scream and be angry and feel the emotion, but it still be beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, beautifully said. It's like this sense of liberating the expression of grief, and it can come out in sadness. And it, yeah, like you said, outside looking in, you'd be like, oh my gosh, that poor woman. But at the same time, you're experiencing and letting that be freed out of you, which is, and again, it's a beautiful expression of just letting go and healing, letting go and healing,
Yeah, yeah.
processing and letting go and healing. So that's incredible. I would love to learn about the program that you've put together. And I know you've said that you've worked with women, and they've reached out to you on, you've helped them out through Instagram and you've helped them out through other areas where they've reached out to you. What have you noticed that they have moved through, or what changes have you witnessed since working with you through their time of grief?
I think one of the biggest things women say to me is that you've given me the ability to feel in control of my grief. And for me, I thought that was so beautiful. They said that not only do I feel seen and heard, but I feel like I'm in control of my body. I feel like I'm in control of my grief. And I guess that's because the way I try and come at it to them is that you are in control of it. You have a choice to, I guess, do the things that can get you through the grief and then get yourself out of it. And
Mm.
that's where they feel like that they have that control because they're allowed to feel all those emotions, but then I try and teach them how to kind of get yourself out of that low place to go,
Mhm.
oh, okay, that wasn't that bad. I've just got to freely express my emotions and then bring myself out, have a shower, and do something that brings me joy. So it becomes really
Mm.
manageable for them rather
Mm.
than sitting in this place where it takes over for hours and hours and hours. They're exhausted, they're drained, and then, it follows into the next day.
Sure.
So I think that's probably one of the biggest changes that I've noticed, that women are feeling in control and feeling empowered to be like, I can handle this, not,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, this is going to be my forever and I don't know what to do now. I can't handle it. No one knows how to get me through it. I've still got to live life. It's giving them the control and making them feel empowered to be able to navigate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we don't give ourselves the permission to, like, even almost delegate or allocate some time to be like, yes, let it all out right now. Go to the depths of whatever this is right now. Give yourself that time, that space. And then from there, like, try counteract that with something that brings you joy or what you're grateful for. And it kind of can sound like words when you're hearing it, and sometimes I'd imagine when you're in that state, but it's just like, on an energetic level as well, there's just such power to that, where you're like, let yourself experience, let yourself feel it, understand that there's always a way through it, or there's another side of, there's something
Yeah.
on the other side of that, and just keep that in your mind of like, that's where you're heading, not staying here, but you're just experiencing this so it doesn't have so much weight in it, to let it
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you know, and it sounds like just words sometimes when I say it to these women. I can tell at the start, they're like, oh, are you really telling me to go on a walk after I've just cried for an hour? And I'm like, trust me, it works.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
and they come back and they're like, wow, I really did. I feel lighter and I feel different after sitting and crying and screaming into a pillow for an hour
Mhm.
and then going to have a nice walk on the beach or going to have a walk in nature and doing something that actually lifts me out of that, because it's that energetic level, it's the vibrations that we sit at. If we can't bring ourselves back out of them, that's when our baseline is just so low. So then when you're really low, you're low.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
about trying to get these women on, a base, like a good baseline. And the only way to do that is to express emotion and then do something you like and express, keep doing that cycle.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Balancing out in inverted commas, the good and the bad,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
grief and the joy and the happy and the sad. So,
Yeah.
it's just, there's the scales that you need to always try find and balance. If you need to go all the way low, or that's valid. And
Yeah.
you've got that right and you deserve to set yourself free from that. But then to not hang there, try find that
Yeah.
thing that's of its equal value in pleasure
Yeah.
as much as you have
100%.
access to
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Majella, I would love to hear about your 8-week program. Can you tell us all about it?
Yes. So my 8-week program, I'm so excited to launch it. So it's called Super Bloom, which the actual name of it was because I heard a song, and if anyone listened to it, it's called Super Bloom by Mr. Wives. It's got me through my most horrible times in life, but it's all about these seeds that lay dormant in the desert. And every few years there's like a rare desert phenomenon where it pours rain. So in the middle of the desert in America, it sprouts flowers. So it is just this crazy, crazy view to see. And the way I looked at it was that I want to teach women how to super bloom after child loss. And they have the seeds within them. And this rare desert phenomenon is the child that's passed away, which is the rain. And they have it within them to be able to super bloom. So that is my whole that is my whole view on the program. And I built it from everything that I had kind of gone through that had got me through my experience. And I put it in 8, so it's over 8 weeks, and it covers modules. We learn about, self-regulation. We learn how trauma actually affects the brain and how it physically changes us as women. I go into inner child work because I really believe that the way, those child woundings that we have, for me, impacted my grief experience massively because I was never taught how to emotionally regulate. I was never taught to speak what I was feeling. So then when I lost my child, that just snowballed, obviously. One of the modules is about human design. So I do human design as well. So it's about teaching women how to be who they've always kind of been in the world, but using their child loss as kind of like a catalyst to be like, okay, how do I want to show up in the world now with that still in my heart? But there's so amazing, like there's so many amazing modules that I've got there, and it's about a group of women basically coming through and healing together and learning all of this amazing stuff to be able to super bloom after child loss. I want them to come out of the 8 weeks and view their child loss as something that they love, something that they feel empowered by. And they're like, yes, I have gone through child loss and I've come out this side and I'm stronger than ever.
Yeah, wow.
So that is my program, Super Bloom. And that's what I want to give to grieving moms.
All of that sounds absolutely incredible, from the name and the story behind it to the work and what you've channeled through and drew upon your experience, your lived experience to create what women need, or parents need, in that horrendous time of loss. And I love the human design aspect of that too. That's really quite, it's in itself so empowering to activate the gifts and what you are, designated within yourself to activate, to be able to channel it through this experience, or use this experience to help activate those things within you. So all of it sounds incredibly powerful and empowering. So congrats to
thank
you.
you. I know, I'm very excited for it to launch. I cannot wait.
Yeah, awesome. So, I mean, with the listeners that stumble across our episode, I'm just really excited for them to find you. And, if this is something that they have, had similar experiences with, like, you would be just this living angel of like, oh, this is a person I've been needing and looking for. So it's been a pleasure to be able to share this space and just learn more about you, your journey, your work, your mission. And I believe that if they find you, and within our show notes, what can you just express your ebook that you have available for them?
Yeah, so I've brought out a free ebook and it's called Coping
Mhm.
with Child Loss Grief. And the ebook has a whole heap of practical activities and tools.
Nice.
It teaches you about healthy grieving styles, unhealthy grieving styles. It has a whole heap of chapters about, how to delegate work to other people when you feel like you can't do, the work at home and so many things like that. So it's basically like a companion for a woman on child loss, going through child loss grief, to just kind of help her through different parts of it and teach her about how to process her emotions and things like that. So that will be in the show notes as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
amazing. Just to have that, in as your own little like in your back pocket of just I
Yeah.
need something with me and that like your constant support. So
Yeah.
thank you. That's going to be epic to be able to share with the ladies and the parents that find us on these episodes. So it has been an absolute pleasure to chat. Can you let us know where they can find you?
Yeah, so they can find me on Instagram. My
Yeah.
Instagram is _girl.
Mhm.
I am on TikTok and I'm also have a website. So any of those three places you can find me.
Yeah, great. And the website, what's that one? Is it okay,
www.thatgrieving.girl.com.au.
cool.com. Oh,
Yeah.
amazing. Well, thank you, Majella. It has been an absolute honor to have you on Beautiful Subconscious. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing, your mission, and thank you for what you do out in the world for the people that need it the most. So
Oh, thank you
I
for having
just
me.
absolutely commend you for the work that you do. So
Oh, thank you so much. It was a pleasure being on.
yeah, well, we'll have to do it again, and would love to hear more about your program too. When that launches and kicks
Yes.
off, cannot wait to hear.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
we'll chat more. All right. So
Beautiful.
thank you. So for those
Thank you.
who are keen to learn more, please download the show notes where you will be able to access the ebook from Majella, That Grieving Girl. Also, keep an eye out for Super Bloom. By the time that this episode launches, she would have already launched her 8-week program. So please, if this is reaching out to you, if you're feeling like this is someone that I have been looking for, I need her in my world in this time of, pain and grief, please jump on a 30-minute discovery call with Majella and just see how she can support you through this time. So we would like to thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning on in. Let us know how you found this episode. Leave us a review, leave us a comment, send us a DM, anything in any which way that we can connect. We would love to be able to do that with you. So until next week, take care of you. Guys, if you're ready to get to the bottom of your crippling self-doubt and finally resolve it from its root source, or if you're feeling like your career isn't hitting the mark and you're questioning where life's heading, if you crave relief from physical pain and just need some real answers, and if you're ready to flip your financial script and rewrite your money story not only through your subconscious but with professional practical tools, then jump on board our waitlist now. This 6-month program is breaking new ground in blending subconscious mastery and expert strategy for your success. Trust me, you won't want to miss out on this transformational journey. We are diving deep into those unconscious barriers, and with a dedicated team, we are focusing on your health, your wealth, your relationships, and your career. So hit the show notes, click apply, jump on the wait list, because this is the way to pave your path to true empowerment. I can't wait.